Can you hear me?
Yeah.
A very pleasant good afternoon and welcome to the Ken Rampersaud Show on Island Zone Radio on this beautiful Monday evening. Um, Up to now, there is no music, but that's fine. Dr. Norindat and myself will be able to conduct this show. Um, not a long show like how I used to do before. Hope I could get back to that place one day. Nevertheless, a very good evening to you again. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And please share the show. It's very important. There's so many questions that people have. And tonight, Dr. Narine who is live with me from Toronto, from where? Kitchener in Canada, would help us put things in place, help us understand what's going on. And tonight we'll be talking about two incidents, especially that happened in Guyana, where a mother actually, I saw the pictures, so I'll be able to describe what I saw to you guys. Again, share this show with your friends and your family. Um, so someone sent me this picture of this woman who was she's dead, lying down next to her, and the person who cut her head off placed her head right next to her body. And there was blood all over the place. And there are so many questions came to me came to my mind, like why would anyone want to do this, like so brutal? It's like an animal passed through that yard and killed that woman. Another incident that took place in Guyana that strike my attention and our attention is the killing of that little boy, 7 years old, who was sleeping with his grandmother, and they found his throat cut. He's dead. He was buried last Saturday, and his grandmother, thankfully, that she's surviving. Um, they found her pampers was pulled to her knees and some injuries to her neck. Now, these are concerning, to us, to our society. And Dr. Narandat, a very good evening to you, and thanks for tuning in. Thanks for agreeing to come and talk about this important um, topic. And to discuss this, it's not easy. To witness these kind of thing is not easy. So first, how are you doing today? I know you work.
Yeah. I'm doing good. We have beautiful weather here in Kitchener, Ontario. So that is a beautiful thing. I'm pretty much sure it is in New York City as well. I'm pretty much sure it's not as hot, right? It's just kind of perfect, so to speak.
I think it's perfect too because I'm in the attic and it's not hot. That's a good thing. Uh,
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not too hot. Thank God for that. Because I haven't set up my AC as yet, if you know what I mean. Um,
Mhm.
Dr. Narine, that when I'm sure that like I do, you follow up these things, what's going on in Guyana and around the world, what's going on. And when especially when something happened in Guyana, both you and I know a couple of people, we want to know what's going on. So when you heard of these stories, what went through your mind?
Well, first of all, um, this is not the first time we've seen this, but
Right.
there's a lot of things usually run through my mind, that I can tell you for sure.
Yes.
Because yes, we live in more of a modernized world now. We have more resources now and all of these types of things. And when these things happen, a lot of questions, comes to mind because for me, I'm thinking, what could have done to kind of prevent these kinds of situations from happening. So, very sad situation. And I think the fact that, you're so passionate about bringing these, important topic to life, it's such a beautiful thing.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And you know what? I am bringing these things into life because I read the comments on these things when it happened, and you and I, we are kind of strong in our mental health, but for those who cannot deal with these things, I like wonder. So my first question to you tonight, and we'll get straight to the point. What could lead a person to commit
Mm-hmm.
such a horrific act against their own family, much less the mother? Why?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Help us
Such
understand.
of a good question. And that's a question I'm sure many people have that question as well too. And so obviously there's no straight answer, but one thing I can tell you based on research and so forth. So usually when people have severe mental health illness, these things can happen. And I know people might say, well, we've been hearing these things and that seems to be an excuse. But the reality is nobody, as you would know, Ken, nobody with their right frame of mind will go and commit right
Right,
those kinds
right.
of acts. So generally speaking, when people are really deep with their illness and it has been sitting there and there has been no treatment and all of that, they don't see the world the same way you and I see the world, right? Where we see the world to be a beautiful place, where we see the world to be a place of opportunity for us to kind of maximize our potential and do all of the right stuff, so to speak. Also, believe it or not, when you have ongoing conflict, not saying that that's the situation here in this family, maybe there is too, or there was, but when you have ongoing conflict, right, over the years, on an ongoing basis, all of these things can kind of lead to unfortunate situation, such as this one, with no, without any question, and I'm not sure what was the relationship with the son. If the who was taking care of who? Like, do you know who was was the son involved in taking care of the mother at all in any shape or
Well,
form
I
that you're aware of, or
well,
not
I
really?
could tell you some things that I heard from family members. Is
Mm-hmm.
that this boy
Mm-hmm.
and his mother was living together, and
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, I'm talking here, say from family. So to tell you what
Mm-hmm.
happened,
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
don't
mm-hmm.
know. So I heard that she had borrowed
Mm-hmm.
some money from him, and she paid him back.
Mm-hmm.
But during the time, he was always fighting her for this money. I also heard that
Mm-hmm.
for the past couple months, probably 4 months, that he was using some kind of drugs. And like I said, I can't confirm these information, but I heard it from family
Mm-hmm.
members.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we know that there was some family dispute between him and his mother, and I also learned that some form of drugs was in the play of all of
Yeah.
this, which between you and
Yeah.
I,
Okay.
go
Mhm.
ahead, go
Sorry,
ahead,
go ahead. Mhm.
go ahead, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
So
You
what?
forgot to finish. I was saying. So basically, I just asked because it's kind of good to know. I did saw bits and pieces as well too on social media along that line. But you've brought up or you've shared something very interesting. When there's some sort of substance use and abuse happening, these things can happen as well too, because when people using any sort of drugs is one thing, but when you are abusing it, it really takes control of you. And I can speak from experience as well too. I used to work in an addiction treatment center, and I've heard it all, right? And so these things, it's not uncommon. It is unfortunate. But the reason why I was asking about the caretaking piece, because that also can add a lot of stress on an individual. Not saying that, the right thing was done there, but if a person is already abusing drugs, let's say, and they're saying if they're already not stressed out per se, but let's say they have, some sort of deep mental health illness, let's say from early childhood and it was never treated, all of that, and then they have to do caretaking, as you would know, all of that lead to so much deeper stress. And if it's not taken care of, which is not an overnight thing, there are treatment for these things, as you would
Of
know,
course,
but it takes a long time, right? In some cases it can take several years and so forth. um, but again, it can be a combination of things, and my hope is that somebody will kind of look keenly to kind of see what went wrong, and the idea behind it is what is it that we can do to kind of prevent similar situation from happening again, right?
right, right. And I'm glad we're talking about drugs, mental health. How do mental illness, substance abuse, or unresolved trauma contribute to violent behavior? And I'm going to say this while you're thinking. Now, every time there is a murder
Mm-hmm.
happen, um, people say it's, and I'm speaking in general. People will say, well,
Mm-hmm.
people saying it's mental health and so on, but people does not understand.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to let you give your professional part of things, and then I'll probably jump in with my little piece, what I say too. So I'm going to say again, how do mental
Absolutely.
illness, substance abuse, or unresolved trauma contribute to violent behavior?
Absolutely. Because keep in mind, when you are trapped mental health, first of all, is a very broad thing, right? That's like the bigger umbrella. And then people may have, specific challenges or might diagnose with, specific, mental health illness and so forth. But the reality is, study shows that when people are trapped into any sort of deep mental health illness, you are not your normal self anymore, right? And so people
Right.
lash out in different ways. People are not, like as mentioned earlier, people are not seeing you know um things in a normal way. I think that's the best way I can kind of break it down so that folks kind of understand, and so they're just doing things. And sometimes there's that inside voice as well too, right? Kind of telling them kind of one thing, and so in their mind, they are thinking they are doing the right thing, right? Sometimes they don't see, and this one is a little bit hard for people to hear, but sometimes assuming I'm going to be very specific here. So assuming
Right.
this fella had really deep love for his mother, I'm just saying, and so there could also be the potential or some sort of plan of him kind of take his own life and so forth. And generally speaking, they wouldn't want to leave their loved ones behind as well too. Not saying that that was the case in this
Hmm.
situation here,
Hmm.
but
Right.
all of these things come to play when when people are kind of in this whole mental health state. And it's easy for us to kind of use the word mental health and so forth. And the thing is, if people are not in it or have never experienced it deeply, they would know. I lost a brother by suicide, very intelligent individual,
Oh, wow.
um, and so forth. But mental health is it's a disease. It's just like any other physical kind of illness, right? So if it's not be if we don't go to get it treated, so to speak, then that will be a real problem. And then you and I or society will have to kind of be part of it in a different way, whether that be finding solution, whether that be kind of making sure that they are being on their to do their bits pieces to make sure that they themselves feel safe and all of these kinds of things. And I hope that if one thing comes out of this thing here, our time here today, is that I want people to know that mental health, as much as it still is stigma in some shape or form, it is a real thing. I see it every day, and I'm actually stepping out of my comfort zone actually to work in mental health, because that's where the magic by the way, when
Right.
you're
Right.
able
Right.
to kind of do that. But it's amazing, and you know exactly what I'm talking about with the line of work you do. It's amazing, or not amazing is not the right word, but it's very interesting rather to see and know of the kind of things people deal with in their daily lives. And it does not necessarily have to be underprivileged people. I had a vice principal for a very major school came to me on his very first visit, said to me he feel like taking his own life and things of
Oh,
that sort. So
wow.
the point I'm trying to make here, when people are in that kind of state, they don't see clearly. And that's one of the reasons you and I have a responsibility, that if we recognize changes in behavior and things of that sort in people, it is important for us to kind of don't ignore those kinds of situations. We have to take all of those pieces not only into consideration, but basically take it seriously. If not, we will continuously have these kinds of conversation.
Yes. And one of the things that I've done my own. For those of you who are watching, I'm so glad that both of us are having this conversation, because probably between you and I, over
Mhm.
60 years of experience, we're talking about mental health issues, and drug addiction. So, I've spent over 30 years
Mhm.
with mental health and mental illness and drug addiction. And one of the things that I've seen is that a lot of people who have mental illness do have some form of drug addiction. And I want to believe that when you're using drugs, it causes some kind of trigger, some kind of psychosis, if you know what I mean, or some mental health issues that you will have. So if you want to add anything to that as a professional, go right ahead.
No, and you brought up a good point. So what's happening? And I know a lot of people are in that situation. So what's happening? Obviously, you and I know, and people who are watching, they're smart people. They know life wouldn't be the same. Some days will be perfect. It's going to be exactly how we want it to be. Some days will be very messy, where we feel as if everything is happening to our life all at once. But that's just part of life. For example, we will live to face death, all of these things. We will experience these challenges, all of these things, very very normal kind of thing. But one of the thing is, a lot of times people are looking for a quick fix, at
Right,
least
right.
based on my experience. And so let's say they're not feeling the greatest. Some people might go, um, do some drinking and alcohol to kind of sleep. These things, I'm sure you've heard of before. They're looking for that quick fix because they don't want to face their issue or kind of work it through. So they just do that. But as you know, those are just temporary things. That's basically people running away from the problem in a different way. Just like the drugs, they might go a little bit heavier. They might take the drugs, but those drugs, obviously they have side effect, right? And so if it's not managed properly and so forth, it can cause a lot of problems. In fact, right where I live, they have something called safe injection site. I'm not sure if you guys
I
have
know
that
about
in
that.
your
Yes, yes, I
city
know
or
about
not,
that.
but they
Yes.
have place. Yes, so basically that was something introduced like a few years ago. Lots of debate with politicians and the people in the community. The reality is study shows that people are using drugs. The reality is people, we know that there are people linger around all over the place using drugs for a variety of different reasons. This whole mental health thing that we talk about. The problem is that's one problem with those individual, but also it affects the community, affects the people. So what the government is saying is that, you know what, we know they're using it. We know that what the best we can do is to do the harm reduction, as you would know, so
Correct.
they can use it, but
Yes.
they're hoping that they will be using less so that they can still function in society. So what they do, they've built like safe injection site where there's a site where nurses and professionals and so forth will be there to kind of give them the drugs they need, like a certain limit and so forth, so they do it safely. They're not, throwing, needles and so forth all over the parks or in public spaces because it's not good for society and so forth. But the thing is, we know that that's a temporary fix as well too, right? And that's one of the reasons it is important for us to let people know ahead of time, or at least in the school system, and educate folks so that they understand the danger, all of these types of things. Because anything that's being overused, it's a real problem, right? Even some regular fruits, believe it or not, study shows you should have, more than this much per day. I didn't realize that.
Like
You know what
mangoes
I mean?
and
And
so
think
on.
about it. If you're talking about
Yeah.
drugs, how sorry?
Like mangoes.
I
If
didn't
you're
hear you.
diabetic, you shouldn't have too much mangoes.
I know, as a yeah, yes, so my wife shared one or two things. She said, she gave the mango as as the example
You see,
actually,
I told you.
because
You
now
see,
the
yeah,
mango season is on, and
yeah, yeah.
usually I will go. Right, and then my wife said, it's good to know because nobody knows it all." So that's what I'm trying to say, that people should use things in moderation. And one of my former co-workers,
Absolutely.
he always say that in moderation, because after work we usually go to the restaurant, we usually go to the buffet and all of that. You just eat, right? And then we usually say to
Right.
ourselves and remind ourselves that, look, moderation is key. But again, when people are using drugs, it's one thing, but keep in mind are in a vulnerable situation. I'm talking about like the homeless people, the people who
Right.
really cannot take care of themselves, properly, and do regular checkups, or have that like support system to make sure that they are kind of taking care of themselves. It is a real problem. And in fact, right here where we live, we have, all of this issue where we have, camping sites, so to speak, where they're going to be people that's sleeping on the streets and so forth. And that's all they do, drugs, because that's like a different, they have their own community there, right? And it's very dangerous for society. Study shows that we know that. And so any kind of help they get is a little bit of a temporary measure. But the idea is, how can we prevent things from getting worse. So, for example, people who are watching, listening, if you have kids and so forth, it's so nice to kind of have open kind of conversation. People know these things. We live in a digital world. Everything's right at your fingertips. Because if not, it can be a real problem. And peer pressure, Ken, is a real problem, as you would know. I remember when I made my very first or second visit to New York City. That was a while back. Somebody offered me drugs, and I
What?
told him tomorrow because I did not
Oh
didn't know
wow.
what to say. I told him tomorrow. That was my way. They were using it. I don't judge people, kind of thing, and I don't think that. Well, that's not my role to judge people. You know, when you're in these kinds of profession, you don't judge people. But I know what I want in my life and whatnot. So I kind of said to them, tomorrow kind of thing. So that was my way to get away and say, hey, I'm not into this because I was afraid, what if I was to try this thing and I get
Right,
hooked,
right.
right? And so I think the education part is so important, right? Absolutely.
Um, so I just want to add my 2 cents. We want to tell you that if you're listening,
Absolutely.
alcohol and drugs does not solve any problem. If it does, just for a moment while you're sleeping. Also, as we were talking about safe house, and that's because a lot of times you find, like for example, I as a nurse, I found about 5, 6 patients died with drug overdose. So what they're saying, if you use now with the drugs that's out there, a lot of these drugs they're mixing them with fentanyl and other things. And so when people go and use these drugs, they become they overdose and they die. So what they're saying now, that use it with people around, use it with your friends,
Mhm.
come at the safe haven, and in case that you OD'd, we could revive you or we could save your life all over again. And that's one of the things that they're doing. And sometimes we want to know if that's the best thing. But you know what? I think that's one of the smartest move to make. Is not you're encouraging people to use drugs, but you want to save people, if you get my drift. Um, what should parents do if they notice disturbing behavior in an adult child?
So first of all, I think if parents were to recognize that, recognize any strange behavior and so forth, that's not something that should be ignored. And I think it has a lot to do with the parents' knowledge themselves. You and I have good knowledge of these things, and so our approach will be very different. Meaning that our conversation probably will be different, or maybe we can have a conversation along that line. But if anything, strange out of the ordinary, I think it's important for the parents to sooner than later, seek, that kind of professional help. Sometimes kids or people in general um, might feel not necessarily feel safer, but they probably feel a little bit more comfortable, speaking with, with other people based on what's happening and so forth. The key point though is to not to ignore the situation at all, because that is an opportunity for them to kind of say, hey, something's not right here. And obviously we live in a very different kind of era now where parents are busy themselves, busy working, something doing two jobs, still going to school and managing kids and so forth. And it can be overlooked because parents are tired, and all of that.
Yeah, yeah,
But really kind of make an effort for that to address it. It's such of a key thing for sure.
yes. So the other thing that my other, let's go move on to the other young guy that died 7 years old. What's the psychological impact on the community when a child is murdered, especially knowing that this child has school friends and so on around the villages? He was a popular little boy. I saw him with a dog, with couple dog puppy was playing. So how
Mhm.
do you deal with this when children, so many children who's affected, know that their friend was murdered?
Yes, for sure. Well, obviously, in a situation as such, people will be shocked, right? People will be shocked. Teachers, villagers, classmates, or people in general will be shocked. And I think the first thing is to kind of acknowledge, yeah, acknowledge that that's happening and let people grieve. But I think what's going to be important, when it comes to situation as such. I think is important, especially in a school system, right?
Mhm.
Because this was a young child, I believe 13 years old. I think it's important for the school system to kind of create a space, a really safe space, so that these situation can be discussed. Because keep in mind, even though children and teenager or people in general might not be talking about it, that doesn't mean that they have not been affected, right?
Right, right.
It's just that people don't know how. So I think, um, because this can have long-term effect,
Of course.
and so I think, addressing it early, right? Have that space so that people can talk about it. And I don't know, what's the qualification level for folks to hold certain role in Ghana. I know um, people do the kind of line of work that you and I do, but I think the qualification levels will be different,
Mhm.
which can also be a problem as well too. Here, I believe in New York City and in Canada and so forth, you cannot offer any sort of therapy related work without certain level of qualification, and you have registration body as a nurse and whatnot. You have registration body. I'm not sure of all the details there, but the bottom line is, regardless of what, um, in those situations, you have to have that support for everybody, including including parents of other um, of the other kids as well too, right? Because people worry, right?
Of
People
course.
people people worry because it's because we have kids. I have kids. I have a teenager. Coincidentally, one of my daughters celebrates her 16th
Happy
birthday today.
birthday. Happy birthday.
So we kind of we did some stuff, and she started this celebration a couple of
Oh,
days ago,
wow.
and it's going to continue for a little while, in different ways. But today we kind of did a little bit of a small family thing as well too,
Nice.
because she's one of those, she rather like a smaller thing with her own immediate family, and then she did some stuff during the weekend with a friend. But the bottom line is, as parents as well too, and even us, even though we live far away, when you see things like that, right, it's kind of there's so much thing go through your mind. But the thing is, we cannot put a blind eye to it, right? We have to um continuously to kind of advocate, right? And so let's say we recognize that there's a need to, let's say, close a gap in terms of offering any kind of service as it relates to grief, for example. That's something we even have a responsibility, and eventually I think I'll do a little bit more like of these kinds of things in Ghana, just so that I can offer something, kind of thing, whether that be maybe mentor some professionals so that they have some extra knowledge, so they can
Yeah, yeah,
use that
definitely.
in the community, something along that line as well too. But I think the school system, they have a role there too, and I think even the government have an obligation as well to kind of make sure that they're putting funding. I'm not sure how much money they put in terms of their budget. I can't remember all the figures off my head here, but I think it's important to have enough funding for those types of things, because those things will happen, right? And the preventative thing too, right? So if, let's say, the individual who committed this act, for example, let's say he got the help he needed, for example, maybe we would have not be talking about this today as well too, because all the therapy thing that we can offer, or all the therapy that people are willing to offer now, that's obviously a temporary fix to manage the stress and manage the grief aspect of it, so that they can carry on with their life.
Hmm.
But we still have to somehow get to the root cause, and that includes everything that you talked about, the use and abuse of drugs and alcohol, and all of these types of things, and so forth. Because in places like Ghana, it's not how it used to be when we grew up. Like now, you can find these things on the streets, kind of just like New York City and elsewhere. You can find these things accessible, which is not a good thing, right? It has its pros and cons, but it brings in a lot of money. It brings in a lot of money to different people, and that's one of the reasons Canada, they legalize marijuana. I'm not sure if you're aware, but it
Yeah,
is
yeah.
legalized. So when I drive around, lots of store will have it there. You can just go in independently there and buy it. Because there's money to be made as well too there. So that's a whole different topic, right?
Yeah, I was surprised when I went to Canada and I see somebody had about 4 or 5 trees in the yard. So I was like, you guys can get in trouble. They said, no, we could have that. It's legal. As we're on this topic, don't you think that our religious organizations have a role and responsibility when it comes to our community?
Absolutely. So anybody, yourself, myself, the religious leaders and so forth, obviously they can only do so much, but the good news is that they are in a privileged situation where there are a lot of young folks are engaging themselves into these kinds of institutes like temples and churches and so forth. And I think they have to be really, real good, really, good role models. And I think they are in the best way they know how. Because I think if we were to remove that aspect of it, I think more things we would have seen more things happening for sure. These not saying that people are not going to temple and churches are not good people, or they're not being protected in any shape or form. The
Yes,
only advice I'll give to folks who are watching, who goes to the temple and so forth, you have to look out for the people who are not going to the temple as well. So it's not okay, you have 20 people going to the temple, that these are my people, and I'm here for you if your things are not going well for you. I think if we want to do those types of work, not easy work, and I commend them for that, you want to be open minded, where if somebody needs, because generally speaking it's going to be different people, right, who will need a help. So you have to have that open mind. And on that note, and I hope you don't mind me share this,
go
I
ahead.
noticed that because this is always a hot topic when it comes to the temples and church. So
Go ahead.
I noticed that when my mother passed away, this is a side note, but I just want to mention it, and I did not know that. I was kind of disappointed in different ways. When my mother passed away, certain temples didn't come because my mother was not going to that part of the temple and so forth. I
Mm,
never knew that temples operate that way, actually, especially when it comes to those things. But anyways, to come back to this thing here, they do have an obligation. Um, People look up to them as role model, right? And they have to and that's one reason they need to be supported as well too. And so support comes in different ways, and they themselves might need support from people like you and I, because at the end of the day they're not clinicians, so to speak.
right, right,
And
right.
that also can be a dangerous thing as well too. But I think when you're a pandit, when you're a priest, meiji and so forth, you have good skill set that you can teach people, so that you using drugs and so forth does not even come to mind, because you're taught differently with really great values and so forth. So for example, like I'm a Hindu, but when I did my social work, I didn't do social work because I want to help Hindus. I did social work because I want to help a human being. And when I
Human
did my
being.
placement, believe it or not, my placement was one of my earlier placement was to be in a Christian church. And there were people who could not do their placement there because they believe in a different religion, and they were not
Right.
comfortable to be in that space. And I fit
Oh
in there
wow.
so perfectly because for me, yeah, because I think that open mindset is so important, because I was
Of
going to
course.
this Christian church in the evening time where we set up things to help the homeless people. We create like email account for them. We set up tables nicely and we
Oh
feed them
nice.
with dignity, not because they're homeless people. We just do it anyhow and so forth. So I think that open mindset is key kind of thing. And all of these religious people, yes, they may be a Hindu priest, yes, they may be, a pastor and so forth. The mindset has to be open, that when somebody come to you for help, regardless of what that may look like, you cannot be bothered, they shouldn't care less, right, in terms of their religion and so forth. And these things does happen, that I can tell you for sure, it does happen. And I think that's a real problem. It's not my problem per se, but it really affects society, it affects people. And when people start to see those things, then it's very discouraging as well too, right?
Yes.
But to answer your question, absolutely, they play a very big role in that, because they are at a good place for it, right? People look up to them, and that's one of the reasons. We are not saying in any shape or form that if people are using drugs or drinking alcohol, that's a bad thing. But the study shows that it doesn't do you any good. I think that's
Right,
a fair
right. Of
statement. I'm
course.
going
Of
based on the
course.
study here.
Yes.
So I'm not
Yes.
saying if somebody go to a party and they take a shot or two, that okay, we're saying you're bad. That's not what we're saying.
Right.
But the reality is, study shows as of today that alcohol and drinking it, every night to go to bed is just not good for you. People choose to do, then that's a choice on their own. But we cannot say it's good for you. We
Of
cannot
course.
say it fixes anything for you, because it is a real problem, right? Because I know folks coming to me, to try to help them to kind of to remove themselves from that, right? And so based on my knowledge and experience, we try different strategies and so forth. But at the end of the day, they have a lot of work to do as well too, right? Because I can only advise, right? But they have to do the work, right?
Right, right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I got two
Hmm.
more questions, but before I go, we go. I noticed the mother of that little boy, and she was so quiet. I could tell that she's in her own space, kind of depressed, worrying. Um,
Hmm.
what advice would you have for the mother who's grieving her child? You know, the father took the child for safety and to take care of the child from the mother, and now she found out that her son died, was murdered. What advice you have for her?
Oh my goodness. Where do? Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that mother, I
That's
think
the
is,
child.
if I were the mother, I mean, you want to make sure. Sorry.
No, that's the small guy that was
Sorry.
murdered. The little boy that was murdered. The
Yeah.
courts, I believe, took him away
Hmm.
from the mother, and the father got him. So the father got him so that he could be somewhere
And
safe,
then this
and
this
then
is the
this happened.
situation.
That's really, how do you talk about this
Yeah, I
to a
know it's
mother?
weird. Eh? Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And so speaking of that, Ken, so sometimes the system can cause more harm than good,
Right,
right?
right,
We're not giving legal advice here
right.
or anything here, but I can tell you, even here in Canada, I have situation where, whatever dispute parents may have, you'll have CAS folks will come and they'll kind of intervene and so forth, and then they'll remove kids from the
Yeah.
family and so forth. But
Hmm.
honestly, when I analyze the situation and so forth, I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, that this can cause more harm, right? And so forth. But in this particular situation here, any help the mother can get, the mother will have to live with this situation
Oh,
for the rest of her life. And the mother definitely is probably blaming herself as well too, because it has to be something, there has to be some reasoning why that decision was made. And I think that needs to be looked at as well too, because we don't know, we're just going based on, yes, the child was removed from there, but I think somebody needs to dig a little bit deeper to
yeah. We
make
don't
sure
know.
it
We don't know
was
what happened.
it was ethical, it was, yeah, yeah, we don't know the reason behind that. But at the end of the day, that's the mother. And in simple conversation here, I think that a mother, it's only a mother can have that special kind of feeling that we don't have feeling as fathers and so forth. But I
Right.
think the mother's love is usually different. But any kind of help she gets, I will encourage people to encourage her to kind of, to kind of take it. She wouldn't be able to. I shouldn't say this, but it's going to be harder. Let me put it this way: it's going to be harder for her to process all of this on her own, without, proper help. And it's not only about the grieving part of it. People still have to live their life. They still have to, have a place to live. They still have to find a way to kind of have income. They still have to, communicate and engage in, in society and so forth. And everybody grieve differently.
Yes.
At my workplace, I manage, a grief team, so we do talk about these things all the time. Everybody grieve differently. And for the mother, it could be, for her, it could take a long time, and that's okay too. Some people, they accept things a little bit more, and so forth. But there's nothing I can say that's going to give the mother satisfaction. But we have to meet her where she's at. But the support will be so important. There's nothing like having professional support and not being judged, and create that space where the mother can just be, right? And only professional people can do that. It's very
Yeah.
different than having a regular coffee chat and having a
Shot. Yeah.
professional conversation. Is two different thing like that. I try to let people know that it's very different. Not saying that people cannot have a conversation and welcome the mother in their, in their home, or being present. It's different. But having, some specialized type of, treatment. I'm using word treatment here. I know that's still a stigma in Ghana, but that's the term we use here. Will definitely benefit the mother for sure. Because at the end of the day, that child is gone, right?
Yeah.
So we know that that's not coming back, and I can see, you know, and if it's okay with you for me to connect something here. So
Go ahead. Go ahead.
there was a 17 or 16-year-old that got. I'm not sure if you saw the incident. The message I sent you. Remember, three-person died
Yes.
by
Yes.
accident.
Yes. Yes.
Remember,
Yes. Yes, you did.
one, so one of them I kind of know. So one of them, I was born and raised in number 4 village, Borbis, Guyana. And so that individual, I'm trying to connect the dots here because we're
Right.
talking about death. I know the father and the grandparents of personally and so forth, but I'm trying to say here when the mother was talking to the child was in the in the casket. The mother basically was in denial there. The mother could not
Oh,
accept the
wow.
fact that the child is gone.
Well,
The
yes. Yes.
mother's kind of and that was the heartbroken part for me to watch. The mother's like shaking, the child and saying like,
Oh,
"Wake up, wake up," and like for like
wow.
a long time. And I said to myself, "My goodness, this mother's still in shock." So same thing here. Like this mother's probably in denial, and this mother, keep in mind that this child here now was removed
Mm-hmm.
from her for safety
Yeah. Yeah.
purposes, or whatever the case may be. This mother now, for the rest of her life, will be blaming herself, right?
Yeah.
So, because that's what the situation is, right? She will blame herself, or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
There will be some sort of blaming there, because when you think about it, even though we cannot change the past here, that child was removed there for safety purposes, right? So
Right.
as I
Right.
understand
Yeah.
it, and this is
Yes.
what happened.
Yes.
Which means that if the child was not removed, maybe we would have not have this conversation here. And I know this is not sexy topic we're talking about, so I want to acknowledge the people that are
Yes.
watching.
Yes. Yes.
Um, because this is not an entertainment kind of show. So people, and we have the World Cup, we have the World Cup thing happening, and we have so much happening now.
Right.
But it's so important that you are pausing and you're making the effort for this, because this is important. That I can tell you for sure.
Thank
Because
you.
not everything
Thank
has to be
you.
about entertainment. Because you are closing a much needed gap here, and there are so many. And the thing is, you and we will never be able to know of the impact that we make and that you make, because people are watching, and people are learning and all of that. And that's a powerful thing. So I want you to kind of
Yeah.
I just thought that I
Thank you.
mentioned
Thank
that,
you.
but I definitely wanted to pause to acknowledge the people that are watching and listening. And don't be afraid to share it, because we know that this is not sexy topic. We know these it's not entertaining. But it is important, and that's one of the reasons why Ken made the effort to make sure he did this, which I think is key. Um, yeah. So.
Yeah. Thank you very much for acknowledging that. Let's say
Mhm.
good evening to Hari Rick Hiram. He's a very informative discussion. Thank you very much. Anita Ish Dowlat Ram watching from Toronto, Canada. Bibi Lalman Siratan, a very good evening to you. The beautiful Miss Hafiza Khan is watching. Thank you very much. And for all of you who's watching, and I can't see you guys, thank you for tuning in. And
Mhm.
of course, and we're talking to Dr. Narine that out of Kitchener in Canada. And of course, the person who took away that child from the mother, I want to believe to Dr. Narine that they will have something to deal with in the head too. That look, I took away this child from the mother so that this child could be safe, and now look, the child is dead. So I think they all of them should feel some
Yes.
form of guilt, right?
Yes, definitely. So but I would assume that the intention probably wasn't bad. It probably wasn't a bad intention. I mean, we don't know and so forth. But when things like that happen, think about that. If somebody's taking away a child from a mother, that's a mother.
Yeah,
It has to be something, that it has to be something there, which I don't know. But the thing is, whoever made those decisions, as you mentioned, and so forth, I can imagine the guilt that they will have to live with for the rest of their life, right? So
Yeah.
they themselves would need some help as well too. But I hope justice is served in some shape or form,
Yes.
because too many of these things are happening, right, in Guyana. And but I think because of the internet and the easy access, like we get to see it quicker, and and we get to know more, we get more. But we cannot put a blind eye to these things. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. You're right. And I totally agree with you. And I got to tell you, thank you very much for always giving your chime in with me and to have a meaningful discussion so that people can learn. Because the truth of the matter is that people are really suffering out there. Everyone is going through some form of distress or
Oh my
problems.
goodness,
And,
yes.
whatever we could really do to help to definitely, I am always thinking of how we could help in Ghana. And thank you very much. What long term support should be offered to the victim's family? In this difficult time, I know that I spoke to one of the woman's family, and she was bawling. She was crying because, and I don't want to give out who I was talking to, but she was
Mhm.
crying because her relative was murdered by her son. You know,
Oh my
so
goodness.
again,
Oh my
what long
goodness.
term?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, and then
Mm-hmm.
I say to myself, she would probably need to go for some therapy because they're very close.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. So the long-term support will definitely, have to be things like individual, counseling and psychotherapy. Like I'm speaking based on my experience from a
Correct.
professional
Yes. Yes.
from a professional lens here. And I would say more specifically, grief counseling, because there are so many different kind of counseling, but counseling relates to grief will be beneficial. I can tell you, I've had a lady who was dealing with the death of her husband, and that lady came and see me, and she was just
Oh,
broken to pieces, of course, because it happened so quickly. And I've been seeing her like over a year for sure. But I have to tell
yeah.
you, like now that lady is like a whole different new version of herself. She see things very differently. She's celebrating her
Oh,
husband, in different ways and those types of things. So what I'm trying to say here is that the grief counseling, it helps. But she was very vulnerable, and she said she's a professional because she's a professional individual. But
wow.
death is something, and everybody will go through that, and I think people has to be open, and this is something people should be talking about, by the way, and people are not talking about it. And when it happens, then people get lost. But one thing I can say is that when it comes to death, because that is part of life, we all experience it. But I can say with confidence, and experiencing that myself and loss, and being a professional in terms of working through these things, I can tell you is that for many people, life will never be the same, right? Because if you're living with somebody, right, for all of these times, you get married when you were young, that was your high school sweetheart, all of these types of things, and that person is no longer here. That's hard. So basically, with through this professional engagement, counseling and grief counseling and so forth, people are learning how to embrace grief and deal with it and so forth, because people will do well for a period of time, and all of a sudden, you know um there's a birthday that comes up for the individual, there's a special occasion. A co-worker of mine, for example, she lost her father. We have Father's Day coming up and so forth. So I think the mother, regarding the situation here, and regarding people who, in that circle, continuous counseling will be key. They will have to learn and adjust to that, knowing that that's a real thing, and they need to be supported. You know, I'm not sure, these things, it can be expensive as well too, but I think somehow, people have to engage him along that line, for sure. And it has to be like, trauma focus kind of treatment, kind of
Right.
thing,
Right.
right? Kind of really it cannot be just anyhow kind of way. It has to be really meeting them where they're at, work with them, with their pace, um, and really connect them with the resources is key. And we are probably using, clinical terms here, but making sure they get the help they need. They will need regular check-ins.
Mm-hmm.
All these little things can go a far way. So they will need it for sure, right? And the thing is, they might not reach out for it because they might not know how, right? And so that's something we have
Yeah.
to keep in mind. So we now
Right.
have to play a role to make sure that they're supported, encourage people to do their piece, and little things that make a huge difference. I saw you will be supporting an initiative in Guyana with a little bit of a contribution. I saw that, which when I saw that, I felt that that was a beautiful thing because it's not how much you contribute, but if everybody contribute a little bit, then that can become a big thing. And so I think if everybody do their little piece and share, will be great. Not only for this family, a lot of things happening there. Because one day we will need kind of thing too. Because one professional lady who was a CEO, she lost her father, and we had a really big event kind of thing, and I kind of gave her a hug and I said, I'm surprised that you're here today. And then she said, no, I need well-being now.
Oh,
Because we were doing some sort of outreach as it relates to mental health and so forth. And when she said that, I said to myself, I think she's being open and honest too. And she said she also she is at that point where she need all the support possible, right? So the
yeah.
support is important for the family.
I'm glad you see that, and it made me very emotional. To be honest with you, I not that I want to cry, but I see my eyes getting red. But I'm
Man,
glad you
man
said that.
can cry too, so it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, no, because when I hear things like these things happen, I always want to. How can I help? And so I
Mhm,
did reach out, and thank God I was able to. I did made a little contribution in Guyana, and
mhm,
they were so grateful for that. The only thing that I didn't made it a spectacle on Facebook. How much I collect or how much I help or who. You know what I mean? So,
mhm,
and I really, to be honest
mhm,
with you, I believe that we should be able to help people. We in the position to help, and despite I always tell people I'm a professional beggar, and it's fine. I feel bad, but I don't feel bad because I believe that when God bless us, we should be a source of blessing to other people, if you know what I mean. So let's continue to live a good life and to be as kind as possible. And so, any further suggestion you want to give, Dr. Narine, that or any closing remarks you want to make? Go right ahead.
So, I mean, to kind of wrap up and kind of highlight or summarize what we said, and I will kind of wrap it up from a social worker perspective, kind of things.
Yes,
And so, I want folks to know I'm going back now from the beginning of this conversation here. We talk about violence and so forth. I want folks to know that violence is often preventable, right?
yes,
And so, and that's one of the reasons we talk about science and so forth. And so we have to pay attention, to the folks around us and people around us, and not just avoid situation, but to try to be inquisitive and kind of see what's happening, because at the end of the day, we have a responsibility as well too. There's nothing more better than early support, right? When people have the early support, and when they're connected with all the resources that are available as it relates to mental health and proper care, mental health treatment and things of that sort, and sort of crisis, services that are available, family or individual counseling and so forth, any sort of community outreach and so forth. I want people to know that we are part of that too. It's not like, okay, well, it's for them and not us. We might be in a really good position today, but the more knowledge we have, it's good because we can share that knowledge with people around us and so forth. And I think the one thing I always remember, Dr. Chady Jagan always say that each one should teach one, so to speak. And I like that idea. So whatever knowledge I have, if I teach somebody that, pass that knowledge on, if I'm aware of some resources that are available, I share it along. If you are able to help somebody, and you're able to do it, you do it, because I always believe as well too. When you do something, and I can speak with confidence based on my own individual experience. When people do something consciously and do it for the right reason, the return that you're gonna get is just gonna be so beautiful.
yes,
right? It's gonna come back in so many different ways, and even it come back in so many different ways because even the feelings inside and within gives you a sense of self
Yeah.
satisfaction, knowing that you've kind of did your part and so forth. It's so important for sure. So that's my kind of wrap up. But I want to thank you though because I think um it's so important to be different, and I'm not comparing anybody here in any shape or form, but I think what you are doing here, you basically see a need to close a gap, and I want you to know your time here matters. And that's exactly what you did. You saw a gap, and you now, based on your knowledge and experience and the person who you are, you want to close that gap, and you've done it, and you should be proud of yourself.
Well, you know what? I have to give. I'm not saying this because you said that, but thank you very much for that. And that's how I look at it too. I'm not looking for the fanfare or to look good and whatever it is. I just want to make a difference, and I don't do this alone. And so I gotta tell you that every time I ask you to come on the radio with me, you're always present. And despite you're a doctor, despite you have over, and congratulations to all the awards that you have received and that you will receive in the near future. Congratulations that you are flying our flag very high in Guyana here, in Guyana, and you made such a big difference. So I want to say thank you too for doing that. It's really important that you team up, that we team up together, and you are really truly the authority in all of this. Yes, I have a lot of experience. Yes, I've been a nurse for going on over 40 years, but together I want to say we do a great job and we're a great team, great teamwork from Canada and the United States. So again, thank you very much. There was something I wanted to tell you and I forgot. I need to talk about. I'm gonna make some reels that probably would not sit right. Some complaints I got, but I'm going to make it, and I want you to listen to one of them when I finish tonight. On that note, everyone, thanks for watching, and keep share the live to your friends and your family, and let's contribute to a better world in this world. And tell your daughter happy birthday on behalf of the Ken Rampersaud show.
I will.
No, I don't want to say problem now start, but 16 years old. Oh Lord, that's good.
16 years. Yes, yes, 16. I'm starting to get worried now.
Yeah, yeah, that's the time you got to be with. But but
Because that's my eldest one. That's my eldest one. I have three girls, but we learn as we go along, and we accept and embrace as we go along. Right? We'll be the best father or best parents possible, and just support them along. Yeah.
you have all the tools that you need to make this a pleasant one. You know what I mean? So thank you very much again, Dr. Narine.
Mhm.
Dr. Narine, and God bless you, and God bless all our listeners. Have a great night, everyone. You're watching the Ken Rampersad Show on Island Zone Radio.